I call to order the February 23rd, 2016 joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Economic Development Corporation. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Devine.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Karpetian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here. And for the Economic Development Corporation?
Board members Devine.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Karpetian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Chair Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the February 23rd 2016 joint public meeting of the City Council and Economic Development Corporation was posted on Friday, February 19, 2016 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's the first item?
1. Director of Community Development regarding Tech Cluster Attraction Strategy Plan. 1A. City Council motion authorizing the City Manager to enter into a professional service agreement with Estelano Lazar Perez Advisors to develop a technology cluster attraction strategy plan specific to Glendale for the not-to-exceed amount of $49,990.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. As our Deputy Director for Economic Development, Darlene Sanchez, comes forward to give you the presentation, I will just introduce generally that last year we had brought a matter before you regarding our strategy to attract and maintain the number of tech businesses here in town. Council or the Economic Development Board had directed that we basically pull that bait and cast a wider net, a larger, more holistic approach towards the recruitment of a consultant that will help guide us through the creation of this cluster strategy. So with that, Darlene will walk you through the brief presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and board members. The Glendale Economic Development Corporation has focused on three main initiatives: promotion of our 18-hour city, continuing to improve service to our business, as well as the cultivation of the arts and entertainment district. Significant efforts have been spent on creating a vibrant downtown district, and today, as you see, there's an abundance of a variety of businesses, shopping, dining, and residential options. As Glendale continues to diversify and cluster become more evident, similar companies, brands, and missions bring together new business, retail, and residents. The clustering of healthcare, financial, and creative-based business companies have brought in high-paying jobs as well as individuals who want to live in downtown Glendale. The synergy of the residential and commercial sectors has created this 18-hour city, which offers those who live, work, or play in downtown Glendale the amenities to do so from early morning all the way to the late evening. This lifestyle of living, working, and exploring all within a walkable area is conducive to amenities sought by technology-based companies. As we considered the 18-hour city as an amenity to our business community, we asked ourselves how we continue to build on this momentum. Some of the questions that emerged were, how do we get more downtown employees? How do we promote this lifestyle of living and working within walking distance? And how do we make sure companies and the talent stay in Glendale? As these questions emerged on our 18-hour city, we also needed to take a deeper look at the services that we provide to our businesses, not just existing businesses, but also those that are looking to locate into Glendale. But where do you start? If you want to move forward, you need to know what's here and what is thriving. We also want to know where Glendale's place is in this market. So we started to research tech. Several companies in Glendale are already part of this tech innovation, and they're part of the leaders in this industry. Companies such as Avery Dennison, ServiceTitan, and LegalZoom. We also have accelerators and innovation centers with Nestle, DreamWorks, and Disney, all here in Glendale. We also know that these companies are currently growing and hiring. This slide here shows types of jobs and companies that are hiring in Glendale. You see net and Android developers, as well as mobile app creators. In addition to this tech presence with our business community, we also see that finding talent is a key attribute to making a successful tech cluster. In Glendale, we're grooming talent as young as elementary school. We found talent at Clark Magnet High School, as well as in media and robotic classes at JCC. There's also many jobs in the healthcare tech at our three hospitals. At your February 17th, 2015 meeting, this board authorized staff to engage with a consultant to help develop a strategic plan that was specifically tailored to Glendale to develop this tech cluster. In June, the board directed staff to conduct additional analysis in the selection of a tech firm. Now that staff has completed this additional analysis, we've sent out an updated RFP. I'd like to present to you the updated criteria and details about the selection process. So the changes that we made were small but very important. What we did is we removed the the price cap as well as proposed timeline. We felt that this would give the experts in the industry the ability to determine what would be best for what we were asking for. We were also very specific about the type of experience we're looking for. We didn't want this to be a learning process for the consultant, but rather we were looking for a firm that had demonstrated experience. Another very important change that we made was the addition of a selection committee. We wanted to ensure that the private sector and the folks that work in this industry would be part of this process early on. We had a great selection team. It consisted of John Kraft, who's a founder of Pandora Radio and runs an accelerator program right here in Glendale, as well as Chris Lucas, who is the founder of his own VC firm in Glendale, Dr. Tom Voden, who is the Dean of Structural Services at GCC, and our own Brian Ganley, who's our Chief Innovation Officer, served on this committee. Also, what staff did is we redoubled our efforts. We wanted to improve the visibility of this RFP. We talked directly with consultants that had done this already with cities, and we also advertised this in a wider circulation. 11 proposals were received and considered by the committee. A score sheet reflecting the priorities that were outlined in the RFP were prepared to assess all of these proposals. We looked at these items, these 9 items here you see on this slide. We want to make sure that they had a basic understanding, basic qualifications of an RFP, like understanding what we're looking for, detail on how they would put this plan together, and we wanted to, again, ensure that they had experience doing this. With this criteria in mind, the selection committee interviewed 5 firms. Based on their proposal, based on their interview, and also a review of any conflicts and their references, Estelano Lazar Perez Advisors, or ELP, was selected. ELP has experience in performing the quantitative and economic analysis that would be required in writing a strategic plan. They've crafted a very well-balanced team with expertise in the existing tech clusters. For this project, ELP teamed up with the Design Accelerator Partners, which works on some of the region's most promising entrepreneurs and facilitates their accelerators to successful companies. Here's a slide showing some similar projects that the team has worked on. They've worked at the county level, the state level, and they have a direct experience with Idea Lab in Pasadena. ELP Advisors proposed a project divided into these 9 phases to occur over a period of 6 months, and it closely mirrors what we asked for in the program scope for the RFP. Out of all of the firms that were interviewed, ELP had the strongest background in doing similar studies. They demonstrated a very specific knowledge of the region in Glendale, and they showed a dedication to go beyond the RFP process with a commitment to implementing this plan with working with stakeholders that are invested in this community. In the interview, they articulated their plan that incorporates these stakeholders, from working with the businesses to staff and also with City Council. They really crafted a team that's comprised of individuals with experience in economics, redevelopment, public sector, technology, VC, entrepreneurship, and startups. What ELP is creating is a blueprint for us to follow. It is not a plan that's going to sit on a shelf. It's a blueprint for how we strategically attract and cultivate an industry we know is already here. One of the most vital understandings that this team brings is that the tech industry is built on relationships and strategic alliance. ELP is well-versed in this arena and even better, well-connected. These 6 points are examples of how they take us beyond just the writing of a plan. They have relationships. They will be the ones monitoring the trends, deciphering the data, and helping connect the dots of what is happening in Glendale with the rest of the region. So you get all of this for under $50,000. A dramatic pause there. This firm really did have a reasonable cost and timetable when compared to the other proposals. And with all of that, this ends my report. ELP Advisors is here to answer any questions that you may have specifically about their proposal or their company, and I can answer any questions you have about the RFP process.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions about the presentation or about the firm?
Not at this point, but I'd like to hear
from the applicant.
Yeah.
Okay. So I understand the Estelano firm is here, represented. Can you come up and introduce yourselves to us and give us a preview of your ideas as to how you're going to help us develop a tech cluster?
Great. Thank you, Mayor Najarian, members of the council. I am Cecilia Estelano, and I'm the CEO of the Estelano-Lazar Perez Advisors. I think your staff did a really great job summarizing our proposal. The reason we think we're a great team for you is because we combine knowledge of doing economic development and redevelopment, as well as tech expertise with our TDA partners as one of our co-consultants, as well as deep data analysis through our team from USC, really great data crunchers. The key to this is understanding what you have in place existing now, what your opportunities are relative to other communities in the neighborhood, and then having a really tailored strategy around your strengths and weaknesses. So we start by working with you and your staff on understanding why are you interested in a tech cluster? What are your goals beyond just saying tech, right? Are you interested in good paying jobs? Are you interested in entrepreneurship, in creating new companies? Those are all different goals that driving a tech cluster can help propel. But really understanding your interest and the staff's interest in having a tech cluster is critical because it's going to really affect the type of strategy we come up with. So, for example, if you're really interested in workforce development and high-paying jobs, that may be a different strategy than just trying to incubate companies, right? Those are two different things. They can be complementary, but we want to know what's really driving your interests. And we've already had some great discussions with your staff so far. So we start there, and then we dig into data. We crunch the numbers. We have a terrific team from USC that has done huge data analysis pools. And what we can offer here is bringing this down to the city level. As far as we know, nobody's crunched data for you on tech clusters at the city level. They do huge things on metropolitan, even in LA County, but people don't typically do it for smaller cities. And so we would drill down into who's currently in your community now, what are the subsectors of tech, and map all of those so we can see if there's an agglomeration. Is there actually a natural clustering in some areas of your city? And then really go deeper into what are the relationships to some of these groups. And that's where the interviews with key stakeholders, with existing businesses, with investors, with real estate people, helps to get a sense of what is the actual ecosystem in Glendale today around some of the subclusters that we know you already have. We know you're great at entertainment. We know you have a great field in information technology. And we think biomed might also be a tech cluster for you, given the healthcare industry that you have here. But what are the relationships among those and between those sectors? Then we will work with you and your staff on deciding what are the subsectors, because tech covers a full range of industries. So what are the subsectors you feel, with the data that we've given you, you have the best chance of growing, right, for the goals that you're achieving? Then we go in and continue another round of investigation with stakeholders and testing some strategies with them. What makes sense? Does an incubator or an accelerator make sense? What type of incubator or accelerator? Is there a business attraction program? Is there investments in infrastructure that might be of assistance? Is there really just about trying to knit that network together? Because so much of tech is about relationships, about folks being close together, interacting with each other or not. That was the key to Silicon Valley's growth. That's the key to what's been happening in San Diego around bioscience, and we think that's going to be the key here in Glendale. People's proximity, their interaction, the simultaneous and kind of that happens when you get together and you're around each other all the time. We'll also be doing a deep dive around the issue of an incubator. Does it make sense? And what form of incubator? We have actually a lot of experience with this. When I was at the Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles, I was the one who came up with the idea of a clean tech corridor and the need for a clean tech incubator. Now, that has evolved, right? But at the time, we were doing it with very particular purpose to put LA on the map as a clean tech center. And on our team are folks who were part of creating that incubator and that clean tech LA organization. We've also been involved in helping to set up an incubator in Cal State LA around bioscience, again, for a particular reason. But an incubator can take many forms, and Mark and Richard can speak more specifically, because they're really the tech guys on our team, about how those incubators can work and what makes sense for your community. We're going to have to really understand what's existing in terms of the networks and the relationships among entrepreneurs and investors today. And then after that, we also want to do a little bit of a dive on the quality of life improvements that could come from growing this tech cluster. It's really interesting to hear about the 18-hour city, right? I had the pleasure of working with your former redevelopment director back when there was redevelopment, and Glendale did a really particularly great job of attracting retail and really high-quality amenities. Your public realm is excellent in your downtown area. So what other kinds of investments might occur in the public realm that won't just benefit the tech industry, but will also create quality of life benefits for your community, for your residents, and for other businesses? We'll be looking at that as well. And then we'll fold that all together into a strategic plan that we will present to you, and hopefully we'll have very specific items for us to pursue, for you to pursue. We don't ever do these plans that are highfalutin. We always do action plans, because the last thing we want to do as people who are implementers is to give you a plan that sits on the shelf. So it will be very specific about the types of activities that should occur, what they're going to cost, what potential funding sources might be out there to pay for them, and how to get it going. And so that's really our approach. Happy to answer any questions. And if you'd like, I can introduce the rest of the team that's here today, if that's of interest to you.
Sure.
Okay. So from TDA Partners, we have Mark Goodstein and Richard Weil. And then from ELP Advisors, Cynthia Guzman, who's done a lot of the work for us around economic development, workforce development, and cluster work. Not present with us today is our USC data crunching team. We didn't think you needed to see our data nerds, but they would be happy to be here if you were interested.
Okay, thank you very much. Any in-depth questions or follow-up on anything? Mr. Sinani?
Yeah, thank you for coming today, and I really enjoyed your presentation. I like sort of the global view that you've taken on this project, as opposed to concentrating on, the concept of incubating or accelerating. You're actually looking at, okay, so we need a roadmap to the roadmap to becoming, to marrying our existing economy to the 21st century economy. Engaging technologies in a meaningful way, where we get maximum yield out of that which we already have in Glendale. So one of the thoughts that I had, and this project is very dear to my heart, so that's why I'm one of the thoughts that I had was bringing in a consultant that has the professional skills and has the know-how. And you talked about this already. Is not enough. You also have to know how do you implement whatever it is that needs to be implemented for Glendale. Every city is different. Every city, every municipality, every geographic location has its own specificities that need to be taken into account. So my thought was that under your leadership or under your direction, we should create some kind of a committee or commission, whatever you want to call it, composed of those professionals in the health industry, in the from the university, from Glendale College, from anything that involves any sector of our economy, the entertainment, that already has a tech element to it, or has the potential of having a productive tech element to it, and using that committee that is local to give you the guidance of how to best incorporate your ideas for Glendale. Is that something that you can work with?
Yeah, Councilmember, that's an excellent idea. In other projects that we've worked with, we think it's really effective if you have a working group, a task force, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it's people who are engaged and committed to your city, who are in the industries that you're interested in, right?
Sure.
Because the thing we know is government alone is not going to drive this. Really, who's going to drive this is the private sector. What government can do is can convene, it can do a little bit of investment, but the magic happens with the entrepreneur, the investor, the customer.
Sure.
So I think having those folks engaged early on, identifying, if you want to call them a leadership group, an advisory group, would really be helpful to us, so folks that we could check in on a regular basis. So we would really welcome that opportunity.
I think that's where, when we look at going beyond that initial scope, to the extent that there is a steering committee that really goes beyond whatever this plan is. The plan has a finite amount of time where it will be constructed, where it will be presented back to this group and to the chambers of commerce and any other stakeholder. But there has to be a leadership group that extends beyond it if it's going to stay vibrant and real for the folks that we're trying to attract. It has to be genuine, and it has to have that beating heart. So certainly when we talk about that stakeholder group, the ad hoc assistance, I think what you'll see from ELP is an ongoing relationship, or at least the opportunity to have an ongoing relationship.
Okay. So I look forward to staff and us or me or whoever working with you on that issue to make sure that you have whatever it is that you need from our community to make your job easier and more productive. So the contract, I'm going to ask a strange question. Usually when you're dealing with someone who's offering up a contract, you're asking, are we paying you too much? I'm going to ask you, are we paying you too little? I mean, is that enough money for you to implement what it is you want to do?
We proposed this a little while ago. We think for what we proposed, we can do this for what we proposed in the time frame that we proposed. The most important element is having a good partner on the city side. Mm-hmm. Because we will be generating data, we'll be generating preliminary recommendations. We have to be able to check in. Your staff is highly motivated. Okay, that came through the entire process. They're incredibly responsive. They've done a lot of work on this. So we feel like we have a great partner to work with, and we can hit that deadline, and we can do it within budget. That's another thing I think that we bring to the table. We don't have to learn about economic development. This is what we do for a living. We don't have to learn about tech. This is what these guys have been doing their whole career, right? So we are not educating ourselves on your dollar. We already know it. It's about really finding what's going on in Glendale specifically and tailoring the responses. So to answer your question, yes, we can do it for the price and the timeline that we've proposed.
Okay, and what was the time frame?
6 months.
6 months. And you think in 6 months you can accomplish the entirety of the mission?
We're not going to build your giant tech cluster in 6 months, but we will give you an action plan.
But
yeah, we can produce an action plan for you in
Okay.
6 months with the tasks that we've outlined.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor. I just want to stress that our city has gone through some transformation over the last 20, 30 years. You know, if you look back at Glendale 20 years ago, we had a huge banking sector, insurance sector. That's all but gone, non-existent now. Before then, you know, if you go further back, we had aerospace industry here in Glendale, all but gone. There's some elements, you know, a shadow of its old self remaining. So something has to, I mean, great, we got a vibrant downtown and we're going to make it even better. We have overall a healthy economy, but we need to make sure that tomorrow's economy is healthy, and we want to be involved in shaping it. So that's going to be your task. No pressure.
Well, I think the wonderful thing about Glendale is you don't rest on your laurels. Other cities might say, hey, we've got the retail figured out. We're just going to keep spinning this off. And the fact that you're looking ahead at industries that produce something is really important. So we're delighted actually to work on this with you.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Friedman?
Thanks.
Well, I feel very comfortable with your company, and you're doing this work. So my questions aren't about that at all. What happened with LA's green tech cluster?
So it's still there. I mean, there's a clean tech incubator that has gotten a lot of attention. I mean, I swear there's a cabinet secretary visiting every quarter over there. So it's still happening. And what LA's been able to do is to leverage its buying power through its Department of Water and Power, its port, its airport, to try out technologies, and I think that's been exciting. Also, its Department of Transportation has been trying out technologies that homegrown companies have been spinning out. So I think that's been really interesting and important.
What's their investment been in it?
Oh, my goodness. Mark, would you like to answer that? I mean, it's been substantial, and let me just say, I think the number, and don't have a heart attack yet, but they built a clean tech incubator. The Department of Water and Power spent something like $40 million on that structure. But it's also going to house, half of the building is going to house Department of Water and Power employees. So it wasn't just building the incubator. The incubator was kind of an add-on to that. And they did an adaptive reuse, which, as you know, can be quite expensive. So it's a beautiful building. If you've ever been there, you should check it out. They also have state-of-the-art 3D printing. They have a wet lab. I was just there, and they had a company, a biotech company, saying they're moving in just so they can use the wet lab. So it was a substantial investment. I don't know how you quantify the cost-benefit analysis of that, but it definitely has put a stake in the ground for Los Angeles in clean tech. It really has.
So my question is, I know that there's Silicon Beach out in Venice because all the cool kids want to be by the beach. And there's the LA cluster, and they've done substantial investments in it, as you said. So I know that Glendale is a little bit different, and we certainly think that we have things to offer. But how do we compete against that beyond either giving these companies free rent or more, or paying them to come? I mean, what is it that we're going to be able to offer them that's going to beat out on what LA is already offering, what Silicon Beach has in terms of letting them surf every morning. And, I know a lot of cities are trying to do this. So how do we compete? And what's our investment then have to be?
Yeah. So you're going to have a different type of cluster than Silicon Beach, without a question. It's just going to be different, right? And so you need to focus in on the things that you are really good at, that you already distinguish yourself. And I think entertainment is one element, and certainly health is another. Those are two right off the bat. And we think you already have some information technology companies to leverage. And Mark and Richard, if you want to join in, please come up. I think just on the face of it, what Glendale has to offer is actually relatively low rent compared to some of the folks you just mentioned. Rents in the arts district in downtown LA are more than $500 a square foot. I mean, they're crazy expensive, and it's really hard to find space there. In West LA, Santa Monica, Silicon Beach, it's more than that. I just heard recently about a $700 per square foot office space. So it's very expensive there. Traffic is terrible on the west side, as you probably know.
So is this then a branding effort? Or
I think a lot of it's branding, but also it's building on the cluster that you already have with Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena. You have one. It's about branding it. It's about pulling it together. It's about leveraging the universities and the institutions you already have. You have a terrific community college that's doing some pretty amazing career technical education work. So I think it's that. I don't think you should necessarily start out of the gate thinking you're going to need to subsidize folks. I think a lot of this is about knitting together the relationships and convening and shining a spotlight. And Mark can speak very eloquently about this because this is what he's been doing for most of his career. So I'll stop there. But I do want to say, don't start thinking you're going to have to subsidize folks. I really think you have the bones of an amazing cluster. You should bring people together and highlight it and market it.
So I can't add that much to what Cecilia said. I would say that it turns out that a lot of people actually like the east side and not the west side. And some of the same reasons, the traffic, the amount of time it takes to get over there, et cetera. And there are a lot of people in the creative classes that live in areas adjacent to Glendale or in Glendale.
Are you familiar with our creative corridor here in Glendale? Okay. You see a tie-in with that, with this cluster? Is there a way to leverage that to sort of, kind of put the two ideas together somehow?
I think so. You're trying to attract and keep talent here. What does talent want? Talent wants good quality of life. It wants a vibrant cultural environment. And so the connection between the arts and tech is absolutely clear. And that's a really good marketing team. I mean, the fact that you guys got the Museum of Neon Art, that says something about Glendale not being your grandpa's Glendale anymore, right? So I think that's part of what you want to do in terms of marketing and branding the area. I also think don't underestimate what you've been doing on residential. The fact that somebody could live here and work so close because of what you've done downtown with the residential is important, and that's a really good piece of marketing right there.
One last thing. I like the way you phrased the roadmap to the roadmap. We don't have the answers right now. So the answer to the question, I think, is that's a good asset. It should definitely be a part. It's going to come from, it's sort of emergent. We'll do the research, but it's getting the right stakeholders together, not necessarily in government, but from the private sector and so forth, together and have the brand and its execution come out of that effort. So.
Yep.
Mr. Garbettian.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. You mentioned Silicon Valley and daytime employee population. And my question is, within that strategic plan, is part of attracting some of these companies that are expanding from Silicon Valley? Because, the office rent in Silicon Valley is $12 a foot. Especially the companies that are design-build companies. They have very light manufacturing built into their business model. Is that part of this our plan or not? Attract some of them to
it might
Glendale.
be. It might be, right? I think the thing, why are people in Silicon Valley? The money's there, and the relationships are there, and there is this culture of an entrepreneurship and innovation that feeds upon itself, but it's very expensive. That may be a strategy. I tend to lean towards you go with what you're growing and you help it grow faster and create that more natural agglomeration. But an attraction strategy can also be good, but it's a little early for me to say that that's where we're going to go yet. You do have some industrial land available. It's great that you have a utility. That's a huge plus. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to.
I think I've watched this a lot because I'm from this area and have watched many of my friends start companies and move up north because they got sick of going up there to raise money. And there is a lot of money now in Los Angeles, which is great. One of the things which you can't program for, but you happen to start with a great example, LegalZoom and companies like that. What happens when companies like that go public is that they and executives stay there and earn their options and then vest, and they leave and start other companies in the area. So there's a throwing a stone in the water and seeing ripples happen. You're starting from a pretty good place. So
the point is, those folks that are cashing in, you want them to stay here. There needs to be a good enough quality of life, and there needs to be others around to help them spin off their new company. Enough C-class people, right? So they have that CFO. They have the person who can go from concept to manufacturing if it's that type of company.
Okay.
Again, I think the idea here is for us to figure out what it is that we
Right.
want to do, what it is that's going to be best for Glendale, in order for us to start doing those things. I don't expect you to have the answers. And you wouldn't have a contract right now if you had the answers. We'd just ask you and we'd be done with it. But that's going to be the goal, to figure it out, then move forward.
You have your hand up?
I do. First of all, I want to commend staff for coming up with and improving the selection process to bring about this RFP and in choosing you. I particularly like the idea of the committee and the diversity of the committee. I feel comfortable. I was going to ask you about your experience. You cited couple of examples of your experience, and I feel comfortable with that. I am impressed with your seeming knowledge of the community, and I think that's really important, especially if this is to be a collaborative effort in working with different sections of our community and experts. I was going to say that I think it's time for us to step into the future or the wave of the future, but actually it is now. The future is now, and I think it's absolutely time for our city to do a study, and if it's possible to increase our workforce or all of the goals that you're talking about, pick one, work on that. I think it's to our benefit, and so I'm very happy with the choice, and look forward to working more with you.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion at 1A. Would someone like to make it?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. And is there a motion to adjourn for the City Council?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Council adjourned. And for the EDC?
So moved.
Second.
EDC is adjourned.